Here, this is what I get. Fair enough. I think that's appropriate too.
There are only 2 rugs. I mean, they had to make a choice.
I understand. I would have made the same choice too.
Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
Just came out this week.
It did, yeah.
American on Purpose, The Improbable Adventures of an Unlikely Patriot. What's so unlikely about your patriotism, or you as a patriot?
There's nothing really. I think it just sounds clever on the title. I think it's quite likely that I'd be a patriot given the evidence of my life thus far. I think that what's unlikely, or the reason why I said unlikely, is that at the time when I began writing the book, patriotism had actually had been taken over. It had been hijacked. There was a polemic attached to popular patriotism, which I found very annoying. Because if you said that you were patriotic about the United States, everybody had you on Fox News marching up and down, and that's not how I feel about this country at all. What I wanted to do was I really like the revolutionary nature, the post-Enlightenment thinking that America represents. So I wanted to be very clear about my patriotism. Also, the idea at the time when I started writing the book, this is before the last election and all the changes that happened, that it was very difficult to sell patriotism to many Americans. There was a great kind of a low morale about that kind of thing, and I thought, well, that doesn't make any sense at all, because I've travelled a lot and lived in other countries. I've seen the competition, and it's not. This is not appropriate. So that's why I was, I also get kind of. It began with that, but it combined with with my. Citizenship and talking at the White House dinner and all that. It kind of seemed to make sense to talk about it there.
Well, so in that way. It's a word that I've heard associated with you. For example, when you got the Late Late Show gig, you were the unlikely host of the Late Late. In fact, people still, I find references to you in that regard. And
yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. In fact, I remember when they were checking out, they were trying out different people for the Late Late Show, and I thought, they'll give it to Alf the alien puppet before they give it to me. And I don't think Alf the alien puppet would have been bad, actually. It's not rocket science, but I think that what happened is that I was very lucky in a number of regards, particularly the Late Late Show. That I ran into people who were unconventional thinkers. People like Peter Lassalle, who is still the executive producer of the show, who was the executive producer of The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson for 30 years, a man who's not unfamiliar with this terrain. And he said, no, this is what we'll do. And also David Letterman, who's not known for following the kind of company line, and so. And Les Moonves, who I had worked with when he was at Warner Brothers, and all these people came together and said, yeah, we'll give it to him and see it. He's punctual, if nothing else.
Well, and the way you tell the story in the book, too, is you didn't necessarily take it all that seriously when you first came in.
I don't take it all that seriously now.
But in terms of even getting the job, and I think you said Peter Lassalle came to you and said, no, we see something in you that we really think is worthwhile. And at that point, you went and did a little bit of homework, you say.
I did, yeah. When Peter, who I talked about, Peter said to me, the night I first tried out for the show, Peter said, I said, this will be a lark, thanks for having me do this, because they were trying out a bunch of different people. And he said, no, this is not a lark, Mr. Ferguson. He said, this is not a lark. This is what he said about himself. He said, I have few discernible talents. But what I can do is I can spot people like you. And if I'm right, you're lightning in a bottle. And I would like you to take this very seriously. And I thought, oh, he's mad. This is going to be awkward. But he's still my boss, Peter. And sometimes I think, oh, he's mad. But we do have a good time doing what we do, and he has his influence and his he's very paternal with me, Peter, and he's very patient and tolerant. He's dealt with people like me for a long time, and so he steers it very very cleverly. But because he had worked so much with Johnny, I watched old tapes of Johnny Carson and was very impressed. I mean, you all knew about it. I didn't know about it.
Well, you say in your book too, you weren't really familiar with Johnny Carson's work at all.
Well, I knew who he was,
right.
and I had seen maybe one or two things. I never thought about it as I never paid attention to it like that. And so I went back and looked at that, and I knew who Dave was, and Dave, I think, is the logistical, the successor, if you like, to Johnny. And then so I watched them, and I also watched Regis Philbin a lot, because I know I kind of thought that would be weird as well, but it's interesting with Regis Philbin, and I had a snobbery about it, but I went back and I watched them because Dave reveres Regis Philbin as a broadcaster. So I thought, well, Dave's very clever, so I'll go and watch Regis Philbin. And actually, if you pay attention to what he does, he's like Proust. It's unbelievable. He takes the tiniest piece of crap and he expands it into an entire chapter. Like he'll say, so, Joy and I went to San Francisco and this guy comes up with an apple and he comes up and he said, do you want an apple? And he said, I don't want an apple. I've already had an apple back at the hotel. He said, and he turns it into this giant story out of absolute nothing. And I think, yeah, Proust's a bit like that, but he does it French, so everybody thinks it's clever. But and also, if you write it down, it's better than saying it.
But between that, the Regis Philbin story and what you talk about in your book about Johnny Carson, and what we all came to know is, what you really watch Johnny Carson for is when the joke fails. And watch him treading water. And the same thing with what you're saying about Regis Philbin. And I dare say the same thing, what you've done with the Late Late Show, which, as you say in your book, started out, they just wanted you to kind of do the gags as you were expected to do, but what you've done with the help of the people you work with is to step away from that and trust that you can just vamp for a period of time, and trust that that's enough.
Well, I think failure is more interesting than success anyway, which is kind of my bailiwick. But it is. Failure is more interesting than success, kind of. I mean, in any art or any performance, I like deconstruction. And so the deconstruction of, I mean, Johnny did it in a very subversive way early on himself. He would take the joke and he would undermine it. And when he had a bad joke, which he didn't have that on, but when he had a bad joke, he made it better because it was bad. And that's interesting to me. And I know that watching me sweat with bad material would entertain me. And that's all I've got to go on. And I think that if you own the fact that, I mean, because I tried when I started the show. I came out and go, that one hand in the pocket and walk backwards and forwards, and you're reading the thing going, hey, what about the new survey out, everybody? There's a new survey out. Hey, scientists are saying. I'm thinking, this is bullshit. But I'm walking up and down and saying it and doing it, and I think, I don't like this. I don't like it, and I started to feel terribly self-conscious about it. But I thought the self-consciousness and the discomfort might be more interesting. It's like, when you have someone you really like, and they fail at something, you're secretly delighted. That's what I think my show is. That's what we try and base the entire thing on Schadenfreude. That's what try and like me, and then I'll fail for you.
Well, did you get a lot of pushback of people saying, no, you need to be doing the jokes, you need to be doing the interviews?
Yeah, a little bit, but I fired all of them. It's true. I get a couple of people who said, that doesn't work, and I said, well, okay, then on you go. And then they said, well, I'd like to stay. And I'm like, well, I'd like to stay. One of us has got to go. You